Hello.
That's a hard act to follow.
I know. No pressure.
Yikes. And I'm a boring lawyer, so.
But you're probably the most interesting, fun lawyer I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Leila is an arts and cultural heritage attorney. And so when someone steals art, they call her. It's a very cool job.
I don't know about that. If someone's trying to recover stolen art, I don't represent thieves.
I see. Sorry, that was the other fun attorney I was talking to earlier. So you're also a classically trained pianist, right? And so I think what would be really cool to start with is maybe talking about the interdisciplinary nature of your work. Because a lot of the attorneys I know, they speak with other attorneys, and that's kind of their whole world, and that's very different than your day-to-day.
Yes, so I think the nature of my work is very interdisciplinary because the art market is interdisciplinary. So there are so many stakeholders in the art world, whether I'm working with an artist, a designer. I'm carrying one of my clients' purses this evening. Mara, can you hold it up? I work with designers, I work with artists, but I also work with foreign governments to represent them on cultural heritage matters. I work with collectors and dealers and all different stakeholders. So I need to understand the art market, which is something I love about my work. I'm very informed about the art world. I'm constantly going to events. I probably do the same as you. I go definitely more than 2 events a month as you require. So I need to kind of have my pulse on the art world, and that really initially was informed by music. I wanted to go to law school to represent artists, like musicians. And once I was in law school, my story is that my first year of law school, I was attending school to study to be an intellectual property attorney, which is some of the work I still do. And during that first year, I learned about the looting of the Iraqi National Museum during the US invasion of Iraq, and started reading about attorneys who played a role in recovering artwork and protecting it for future generations. And I thought, I really want to do that. And I read about one particular individual, Matthew Bogdanos, who was a colonel who went out, was in Iraq and helped to recover art. I said, I want to do that. And the nice thing is, I do work with him sometimes, although I've also been adverse to him.
Okay.
I know he's kind of a divisive figure in New York because he very aggressively pursues the return of art, which some people kind of question in some ways. But I had a chance to work with him on a few cases involving stolen antiquities. And my career, I think I've just been so lucky that I've been able to start out as an IP attorney representing artists, and then I finally got my foot in like the fine art world, where I represent collectors and dealers and foreign governments, which I really love. So we can talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, but maybe tell us a bit about the different types of professionals that you get to work or collaborate with that most people don't necessarily think attorneys get to work with.
Oh, yeah, they're really fun, creative people. So I work with photographers, I get to visit their studios. So to really be able to effectively represent people, you need to really understand their practice, what their goal is. So a goal that an artist has may be very different than the goal of a gallery, a dealer. A dealer may be thinking about the art and selling art purely financially, whereas an artist might be thinking about his or her legacy, his or her message, the authenticity of their work, presenting works in museums, not just in a commercial space. So it's interesting to work with all stakeholders to understand what they really want and to be able to walk away and have an effective deal where everyone is happy at the end of the day and gets what they want. And lawyers don't just fight. It doesn't have to be contentious. It doesn't have to be litigious. It could be working together to find a solution that works well for everyone.
So with that, I'm curious because so much of your work has to do with these sort of like priceless cultural artifacts. But the way that the law functions doesn't always line up perfectly with ethics. And I'm curious how you try and navigate and sort of close that gap when you're dealing with such precious things. Like how do you sort of reconcile the challenges between like hard legal code and something that is so meaningful to so many people?
So, as you said, the law and ethics don't always align. And I think there are a few really great examples of when that happens. So, you can have a case, let's say an art ownership dispute. So, and this often comes up in cases involving like Nazi-era looting, where a family may have been victim during World War II at the hands of the Nazis or at another party, another circumstance. And they finally rediscover where their artwork is decades later. But in the meantime, there were good faith purchasers, people who thought they were purchasing something legitimate, had no idea that the work had been stolen in the past. And courts do have to grapple, and they recognize this kind of shortcoming with the law, that in a court case, a judge may have to make that determination about who the winner is and who the loser is. And there's a really well-known case from the 1960s where a judge says there are two innocents. And that court had and it was a New York court, because most of the art law cases are in New York. They come to this, Southern District of New York. And the judge really needed to, the judges needed to grapple with that fact that unfortunately a good faith purchaser was going to lose out in favor of that original owner. But that's not always what happens. Sometimes the art isn't returned to a rightful party because of things like statutes of limitations, jurisdictional issues, all those boring legal things that I won't really get into now, but there isn't a perfect solution, and unfortunately, sometimes there's a loser. The thing that I think gives most lawyers hope is that most cases actually settle. Usually, we try our hardest to negotiate. So you want your art back. My client also wants the art back. Could we do something? So in like the World War II scenario, what if that work remained at the museum, but the museum acknowledged your family in some way? And that's why we have places like the Neue Gallery that have placards on the walls that memorialize the people who had suffered during World War II, the losses that people suffered. So we try to find those types of creative solutions so that there doesn't have to be a loser. That at least there can be something that each party can walk away with.
Okay. So I'd love, as I was putting together all my questions for the speakers, one of the ones that excited me the most was this next one for you, which is, what is your juiciest stolen art story?
Juicy.
I'm sure
There's
you
so
have
much
just
good
a
stuff.
very juicy stolen art story.
There's
And
good
I think
stuff.
we all want to hear it.
Yeah, there are a lot of great stories. Some of it's confidential. I'm going to give you that lawyerly answer.
Alex, turn off the cameras.
So, just recently, I'll give this little plug. You can look up my name in New York Times, and just last month, we had a return to Italy for a head that was found in the Roman Forum, had gone missing from the museum. It was just listed as missing. And then it reappeared on the New York art market with the gallery.
What was this head made of? I just feel like that's an important distinction here.
Marbles.
Okay,
It
all
was
right,
a Roman bust.
Okay, all right.
Marble bust. And actually, I'll talk about another Roman bust in just a minute, because that's maybe my best known case. So the bust ended up on the art market, and after 7 years of fighting, I represented the government of Italy, and then the Ministry of Culture was also sued, so I represented both of those entities, and the marble was just returned last month. So, I don't know, I'm going to Italy, I think, in November for that restitution, which is going to be nice. But my best known case also involves a Roman bust. I had a client that lives in Austin, Texas. She was at a Goodwill store, so you might have seen this in the news because it made international news. She purchased this marble bust for $34.99. Picked it up and it weighed 52 pounds. So someone made a really big mistake at that Goodwill store. Yeah, it was obvious that it was more than
You represented Goodwill.
No. No, I represented the buyer.
Yeah.
And there are photos on the internet of this, that she strapped the bust into her car. She put a seatbelt on it to keep it safe, which, I really appreciate. You have to conserve and protect your art. So she called me. What can she do with this? Can she legally sell it? And as a lawyer, I gave her the advice of, well, what law applies here? And a lot of people had very different opinions about this once the case was settled, it was settled. And it was in the New York Times. And I'll tell you about some of the questions that people asked. But basically, what had happened with the work, because we worked with a provenance researcher, someone, I think through Sotheby's, who recognized the work as being stolen from a museum in either 1944 or 1945 in a German museum. And it had gone missing. No one had seen it for decades.
Somebody at Sotheby's saw a picture of a bust, and they're like, I know a picture of that bust
Yes. Yes.
from 1944.
Yes. And that's what's
And
so,
it's the one that's missing.
yes.
It's my favorite bust. Okay.
So that's why, like, part of my job is also interdisciplinary, like you started with this question, because I get to work with art historians and these incredible experts that know the art so well, that can authenticate art, that can recognize when something is a forgery, and have so much knowledge. It's amazing. So I'm constantly learning about art. I feel like I'm getting a PhD in art history as I continue along with my job. But he recognized it. We know where it came from. It had this really interesting history. It was bought by Ludwig I, who was the grandfather of crazy Ludwig, who had built Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria. He had purchased it legitimately. He was like obsessed with Roman and Greek antiquities, built the perfect replica of a Roman villa from Pompeii, like a Roman era villa from Pompeii. Still to this day, it's the best replica out there. It was bombed in World War II. And the expert recognized it. There's a postcard that has the little bust in the corner. I own one of these postcards. You can buy them on eBay. But there are photos from the 40s, and he recognized this. And then we needed to know, like, what can we do? Can she keep it, or can Germany get it back? And all the confidential attorney-client privileged conversations took place. And it was wonderful working with her, because she decided to do the ethical thing. And we contacted Germany and said, we have this, and we want to return it to you, but we have some conditions. So even if you lose the piece, and she wasn't able to sell it on the market and get all of that money, she did get some wonderful benefits. So the piece appeared at the San Antonio Museum of Art, which has a wonderful antiquities collection. She had a lot of fame, which is great, because she's a professional art collectibles dealer, seller. She has her online business. So clearly became incredibly famous. This was all over the news. Mario Lopez said my name on Access Hollywood. So I was like, well, really mispronounced my name on Access Hollywood. You did a very good job with that.
Thank you.
But the work ended up going back to Germany when it was at the San Antonio Museum. Visitorship ticket sales doubled during that year. So the museum was happy. My client actually did get a finder's fee. It was supposed to be confidential, but it's all over the news now. So I'm repeating that, publicly available information. And I think it changed her life for the better. It really helped to educate the public, I think, on making these ethical choices. And I think it's something to really celebrate, that people do the right thing. It's not just about greed, but people want to see rightful restitutions. And it was an honor working on it. And I get calls all the time about people who find treasures, but most of them are not legitimate. Yeah. Yeah.
Next time we have you, we're going to have you talk through all of the illegitimate calls that you get.
Some of them are wild.
Leila, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.